Hello, and welcome to Back Through the Lens, where two film school friends talk about movies through the haze of nostalgia. The good, the bad, and the ones that aren't quite how we remember them. I'm your host, Rachel, and with me is my co-host, Joe. Today's movie is Tiny Toon Adventures, How I Spent My Vacation.
Is it just me, or does summertime always feel special? The weather is warm, the sun is shining, and we get 3 months to ourselves. Well, we used to. Despite being out of any formal school for quite some time, or the fact that I've had a job since 15, summertime has always been a sense of freedom. And even though as adults, with vacation time built into our mandatory jobs that we can probably take any time, there's a lot of us that still wait until those prime summer months to get some R&R. Whether it's staying at home and tending to your garden, squeezing the family into the car and driving to a magical kingdom, or perhaps jetting off to a faraway and exotic locale. It's summer vacation. Get out there and enjoy it.
So, have you been enjoying your summer so far?
Did you say have I or how have I?
You know what? Either.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
I've been watching movies and recording podcasts with my friend.
Yeah.
In June, we'll be doing a lot of local baseball. I don't know how that happened, but everyone keeps inviting me to the captain's games, so I'm going to go and be baseballed out by the end of the month, and I have a whole summer still to go.
Nice. I've been hanging out with my kid. It's not exactly a vacation over here, but it is summer. I don't do well with hot weather. I probably have mentioned that before, but it's been nice for my kid to be able to just like run around with the neighborhood kids every day.
Yeah.
And tire himself out.
Well, we just got hot weather. It's been kind of rainy and wet out for most of our spring here in Cleveland. So I'm going to enjoy the hot weather. We only get a little bit of it, and I try not to complain when it's here.
Yeah, I get that. But speaking of how we've been spending our summer vacation, I watched our movie pick for today with my son.
Mm-hmm.
And then because I apparently made him watch something I picked, I then had to watch something he picked, which was a Pokemon series. I don't know the difference between all of them, so
Okay.
this backfired a little bit on me.
Don't you alternate on weeks, every other weeks or something? How do you cram one in on you?
We do a Friday movie every week, but I wanted obviously to revisit this before we talked about it, and I was like, "Hey, you might like this movie. It's based on this TV show I watched all the time when I was a kid." And he did enjoy it, but then I had to watch Pokemon, so whoops. I just thought we could spend some time together. I don't know.
Tit for tat, I guess. I'm excited as we go through the movie if there are any scary parts for him, because I doubt there would be, but you never know.
I had some concerns. We'll get to that.
Oh,
but
yes.
we're speaking very vaguely, so why don't you introduce our movie for today?
Okay. So today's movie is Tiny Toon Adventures, How I Spent My Vacation. We have multiple directors here: Rich Ahrens, Ken Boyer, Kent Butterworth, Barry Caldwell, Alfred Gimeno, Art Lenardi, and Byron Vaughns. Released March 11th, 1992, it is not rated, and I wanted to point out that Steven Spielberg is an executive producer.
Of course he is.
Because of course he is, yeah.
He doesn't have anything else going on. Why don't I add this?
You know what? He probably drew the damn thing himself.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't seen this little fun film, I'll give you a little breakdown. It's summer break for the students of Acme University, but what adventures will our lovable characters get into? We see our school friends celebrate their time off in a variety of ways, from a road trip with the family to a Huckleberry Finn-esque river adventure to creating and cultivating their own personal kiddie safari park, or even just wanting to go to the Dangum movies.
I want to go to the Dangum movies.
Yeah, it's harder going as an adult.
It absolutely is. And actually, speaking of such, they do those kid showings, they'll play older movies that are like $1 or a couple dollars, but I never want to take my kid because it's going to be like crowded and awful.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Go by yourself and enjoy the crowded awfulness.
If I'm going to go by myself, I'm going to see something that's not rated G.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I'm going to spend some time being a grown-up.
Oh. Well, we spent time being grown up watching this animated feature. I can't recall the first time I saw this. I didn't know until little dive for the pod that this came out originally on video. I always thought it was just like a little mini series that would happen back when sitcoms were on TV. There was a summer break for them as well. And I always
Hmm.
thought this was at the end, like kind of before our summer breaks. I remember seeing it on TV like towards the end of my school year, but apparently it was released on video first. Did not know that. A few years later, they broke it up into like a 4-part series.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought it was released on video first, just the way things worked back then, at least from what I can remember.
Yeah.
But that does make a lot more sense because there are lines throughout the movie where they say things like in this video or something like that.
Mm,
And I that did stick out to me because I was like, I assume this aired on TV, yes?
I mean, it did, but apparently not till later. And it's funny too because the release was in March, so the video came out in March. But I think this could be a false memory, but remember like going to my mama's house, my other grandma. She would watch us after school sometimes, and specifically like walking there, nice weather, getting excited to go watch after school cartoons, and knowing that it's that time of year where I can watch Tiny Toons. How I spent my vacation, and we'll go into why I emphasize that word a little bit here.
Yeah. I definitely watched Tiny Toons the show a lot as a kid.
Hmm.
I was convinced at first that I had never seen this before when you first brought it up as a pick, but very quickly things were familiar to me. So I'm pretty
Nice.
sure I have seen this, especially with how much, like, I know I watched this growing up. So, especially like you said, if it did eventually air, like chopped up on TV, like I'm sure I saw it at some point. But all of a sudden, like even the opening song, I was like, wait a minute, I know this.
Hmm.
So,
It's funny too because I watched the show a lot as a kid too, but the episodes I really remember are the ones that are involved in this originally aired or released film, and then some of like the musical episodes where they kind of recreate music videos. I don't know why those stick out for me so well, but then the rest is kind of a blur. But with most cartoons from like our childhood that I thought I saw a lot of, apparently I've seen like 1 or 2 seasons or the same episodes over and over and over again.
mhm.
And like I'm rewatching some cartoons on Disney now that I remember watching as a kid, but apparently I've only got through the first 5 episodes and they kept re-airing. So I'm like, none of this is familiar to me. This is all brand new.
Mhm.
35 years later, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, watching this made me really want to revisit the show, especially with my kid because he ended up liking the movie and it looks like it's only available if you pay per episode on like Amazon or Apple and
Hmm.
I already pay for so many streaming services, like I don't really want to
They
pay.
have the revisited show streaming on, I think, Max or one of the services, but like they have like kind of, I don't want to call it a sequel show, but they went back and redid it. It's like Acme University something. I don't know. It seemed like maybe they're a little older, but it's still kind of the same premise. I haven't watched them yet. I just when looking for this film on streaming to watch for the pod, I
Mhm.
saw a bunch of other variations of our Tiny Toon friends.
Okay, I vaguely remember that being a show.
Hmm.
Like I remember hearing about this, but yeah, I want to watch the original and I don't have to pay per episode. Come
Have to
on.
buy the DVDs. Screw it. They're out
Is
there
it even
somewhere.
on DVD?
Yes, I think so. I don't know if it's still in print though.
Hmm, okay. Maybe that's something I'm gonna look up after we record this.
But speaking of the show, Tiny Toons, the TV show, it ran from 1990 to 1992, which, like most shows from my childhood, I could have sworn it was like 20 years long. I feel like 2 years does not seem long enough.
I was
But
surprised at that span too.
yeah,
Definitely thought it was more than I think it was only 3 seasons, they said,
I think so. Yeah.
which is surprising.
Yeah.
Because also it from the research we did, it seems like it was very popular.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or
So
I thought it was cool. I don't know.
in my own little world, it was very popular. Yeah.
Yeah. Me and my like 3 friends all liked it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Me and my brother, two thumbs up.
No wonder why I got canceled. Um, It was originally proposed as an idea to kind of rejuvenate Warner Brothers, their animation department. Also, originally going to be developed as a movie, which is kind of a little foreshadowing to the confusion here. How I thought it was a TV show, but it came out as a movie. So it was originally
Mhm.
planned as a movie instead of a series. They wanted the specific idea of a younger version of the Looney Tune characters, as in like the ones we know, Bugs, Taz, but as kids.
Hmm.
This kind of came from the popularity of shows like Muppet Babies, Tom and Jerry Kids, Flintstone Kids, A Pup Named Scooby Doo, etc. I haven't seen most of those. I watched a lot of Muppet Babies.
Yeah. That's one show from my childhood that like I haven't been able to find anywhere to show my kid. I watched so much Muppet
Oh
Babies.
yeah,
But I was also a big Scooby Doo kid.
I liked watching the like older Scooby Doo stuff, like that my dad showed me.
I definitely prefer the older Scooby Doo, but I will watch pretty much any version.
I watched it a little bit growing up, like that, the Flintstone Jetsons. I didn't really get full on into it, but I definitely appreciated it. And when it was on, like during Saturday morning cartoons, I definitely wouldn't switch the channel. That's for sure. Or Tom and Jerry's another good one. But I think before Muppet Babies or Tiny Toons came out, I was a big like regular Looney Tunes fan.
I feel like I watched Looney Tunes. I don't remember that being a big part of my like cartoon rotation, but I don't know. I'm trying to even remember like what was life like without streaming? Like what channel was it on? Did I watch that channel? I don't know.
Oh, I don't remember now. I remember there
I
was commercials, and it gave me time to like get up and get another bowl of cereal.
yeah. Um no, I'd say my favorites were like Garfield and Friends,
Oh yeah.
Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the Saturday morning lineup? I can't remember how old I was at the time, but they had like Recess and Pepper Ann. I like those.
Mm-hmm. It was a
But
little later.
yeah, it was a little later.
Yeah, I forgot about Garfield and Friends. I love that show.
Hmm. I always think of, I don't remember what it's called, but like the farm animal
Yeah, the
section in the
second
middle.
half of it
Yeah, and like the duck that had the inner tube and his little duck face on the inner tube would like change
had an
faces.
inner
Yeah.
tube.
Hmm.
Yeah, I forget what that was called. But like, I always thought that was the end Friends part of Garfield and Friends because it was like a two-part episode. Like 15 minutes, you had Garfield with John and Odie, and then break, and then it was the farm with the pig, or I think it was Orville. Was that the pig's name?
That sounds right.
And then all the farm animals. I don't know. I don't remember what that was called, but that was always like a 1-2 combo.
I'll have to look into this later. All these things I want to watch with my kid, and like, I mean, some of them are out there somewhere. Okay, so back to Tiny Toons.
So Warner Brothers approached Steven Spielberg to collaborate with them, and he had an idea to create all new characters that were based on Looney Tune characters, but he didn't want to work on the characters that were already famous. So instead of like a Muppet Baby version of Looney Tunes, we have just new kid tunes
Hmm.
that are, very similar to their Looney Tunes inspiration. The show ended up winning multiple daytime Emmys and one primetime Emmy, which I don't remember it being on primetime, but I don't know how that works.
I wonder if it was for one of these specials, because I feel like at least when those premiered, they would usually be in the evening.
Mm-hmm. I think they did a Halloween one too, but I don't really remember seeing it.
They did a Halloween one. We're going to talk about that.
Ooh, help me remember.
Uh, we're going to talk about some less savory things related to
Oh,
that.
well,
Mm.
until we get there, Fox eventually acquired the rights to the show, eventually shelving it to quote unquote make way for the Animaniacs, which is another show I loved. And it's weird that they kind of shelved Tiny Toon Adventure being as popular as I remember it being to make way for Animaniacs when why couldn't they have both? I don't know. Unless they just use the same staff, writers, animators, and they're like, we're going to focus on this.
This was confusing to me as well, because I guess my opinion was if you're a network, especially the way networks operated, before streaming, wouldn't you want as many hit shows as possible? Apparently not. But yes, there was staff overlap. We will also talk about that a little bit. But yeah, this was a strange reason to cancel a show when I first dug this up.
The only thing I can think of, and this is just a quick thought, and I didn't look into this, is wondered if because I remember on the show, their professors and teachers and principals and whatnot were the old Looney Tune characters teaching the new tunes how to become tunes, I guess. And I wonder if maybe the licensing for those was expensive and the Animaniacs were their own creative, the three
Oh,
characters.
mhm.
They had the security guard or whatever. And they didn't do a lot of crossover like that. Like I remember like Bug specifically being like the principal or a teacher, and I didn't know maybe they'd have to pay extra, but it's Warner Brothers, so I'm that's already in their back pocket, right?
You would think.
Hmm. Maybe they just want to do something different, I guess, something quote unquote more original. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Also, maybe the show was expensive to make because we had found out that they had a full orchestra score each episode. I'm gonna repeat that. They had a full orchestra score each episode of Tiny Toon Adventures
Yeah.
because Spielberg was committed to making the music as close to the original composition of the classic WB cartoons. So maybe that answers some questions.
It's possible.
Unfortunately, they had some voice lined up with Mel Blanc, but he passed away before he can make a couple of cameo appearances for some of his former roles. So all those voices are people, well, I guess they're voice actors, but they're kind of imitating Mel Blanc's original characters, Bugs,
Hmm.
etc. And I found out Vincent Price and Phil Hartman did some voice work on the show, which that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's fun. What's sticking out to me right here is how we don't exactly know how this worked, but they approached Steven Spielberg to collaborate on this as if Steven Spielberg had like nothing else going on in
Mm-hmm.
life, especially because based on this time period, what we know now, he would have been in that 2 or 3 year long pre-production for Jurassic Park, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I was familiar with Steven Spielberg before we started doing this podcast, but he's popped up a lot this season. And I guess I didn't realize how many things he was involved with, sometimes at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, yeah, I know his hits, I know most of his filmography, but he's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. We'll see him more down the line, I'm sure.
We will see him more. Okay, well, he's gonna make sure we do. He doesn't
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah. Can't stop, won't stop. So as I mentioned, this movie came out first to direct video release. Apparently, it is the second animated feature to go direct to video. The first one was a GI Joe film, which I
Huh.
didn't watch a lot of GI Joe as a kid, so I don't. Eh,
Yeah.
it's number two. It was originally titled "How I Spent My Summer Vacation," which is how I always remember it.
Hmm.
But I just think because I associate with the episode with how they are literally spending their summer vacation. But they had shortened it to just "My Vacation" because it wouldn't fit on the video cover.
I feel like that's such a strange reason.
Yeah, like you can just hit like a hard enter and then put "Summer Enter Vacation." Like,
Which is, yeah, isn't they're like a design department whose job is to make things look nice?
can you imagine just like how I spent my summer vacation? Oh, we can't fit it. Gotta get rid of a word here.
Yeah, like how many projects have changed their titles because of a like space limitation on a box? Just
We only have 177 characters. We got to get rid of summer. I don't know.
it definitely trips me up though because I do want to say how I spent my summer vacation all the
Mm-hmm.
time talking about this. One of my favorite bands, the Bouncing Souls, they have a classic at this point, I guess, album called Shut Up. How I spent my summer vacation. So especially for me, that being something that's like
Mm-hmm.
big in my life, I want to say how I spent my summer vacation to this all the time. I don't know, like I have to really think about it to leave that word out.
Yeah, it's weird. So speaking of video release, though, I saw recently that the VHS release was one of the highest selling videos in the United States. On Billboard charts, it ranked 12th in sales by April of 1992. So it was released a month and it like skyrocketed to top 12, I guess you can call it.
They weren't releasing like TV shows for home video
Mm-hmm.
because that didn't happen really till DVD, right?
The early ages of DVD, that was kind of happening.
Yeah, my point is in 1992, it's not like you could just buy seasons of television and own them to
Oh, yeah.
watch whenever you want.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that contributed to anything because, if you were a kid and you really like Tiny Toons, you were just, you know, hope it airs at a time you're watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Exactly.
this was probably pretty novel that you could like buy Tiny Toons and watch it whenever you wanted.
The dates here, the movie was released in 92. By April, a month later, it's 12th in sales of VHSs, but the show lasted to 90 to 92 to make way for Animaniacs. Like, it's clearly very successful right now. The money's rolling in.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
We'll get into the end of Tiny Toons. There's so much more than I ever expected.
Interesting.
I went down a YouTube deep dive.
A rabbit hole, if you will.
Ah. Um,
Sorry.
I learned a lot of things that I did not expect to learn
Hmm.
for a discussion about a child's TV show.
All right. Well, I've got one more factoid, and we can start through the movie because I really like when I found out about this, especially because we're talking about shows we watched as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Dini is one of the writers, which I did not know that. I wouldn't have known that as a kid, obviously. But he is known for comic book writing, especially Batman, but he was also one of the several writers on the DC based animated series, including Batman the Animated Series, which I can tell you, I watched that like crazy whenever it was on. And I, as an adult, own all 4 seasons on DVD because, as you said, sometimes it's hard to find things on streaming. So you might as well
Yeah.
just own the physical copy.
Yep. Yeah, I remember watching that Batman show too. I've mentioned it before. I wasn't big into like superheroes or comic books, but Batman was so big when we were kids. I wasn't really into anything else, but I was into Batman,
Yeah.
but only like the TV shows and movies, I guess.
Yeah.
My brother was really, he got into it enough that he had like all the toys and things like that.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, this is so funny because obviously I was excited to revisit Tiny Toons, but then this has got me thinking about all the other shows I watched
Mm-hmm.
as a kid, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is fun. Maybe there's a spin-off in our future where we talk about television.
uh, well, I have
Oh
lists, but
my God. Okay.
we'll move on with this one for now. So the opening song, the one
Mhm.
that kind of jarred your memory, right?
Yeah, it really did.
I remember again coming home from school, and probably by this point it's past 1992. This is probably syndication of it, but I know I was in elementary school. But like making sure if I see any of these episodes, it's the first one, but on time because like I love this song. I don't know why. It's very catchy, but it's also very relatable. As I mentioned, it was towards the end of my school year, so I definitely felt what these kids are feeling. Like they're just waiting to leave and not come back for 3 months. And as an adult, I kind of feel that way at work.
Oh, I totally get that. This brought me right back to like even just a regular school day, like watching the clock, just wanting to go home. And like, I wasn't necessarily one of those kids that disliked school necessarily. For the most part, it was just like, okay, I get to see my friends every day. And like,
Mm-hmm.
there were some aspects of school I did enjoy because I am a dork, as my husband likes to put it. But also, it's a long freaking day, man. Um, and I want to
Yeah.
like go home and like watch movies.
You want to go home and watch Tiny Toons?
Right? It's funny because the way they're all acting for summer break to start. So my son was watching this with me. My husband came in for some of it, and he had to explain to my son that like when we were kids, kids weren't like upset about the school year ending because, he obviously just finished up a school year. And like half the kids coming off the bus the last day were like sobbing because like they were going to miss their teachers, they were going to miss their friends, and they just love school so much. And we were like, wow, this is really a testament to like how good of a school you have, because none of us
Mm-hmm.
acted like that the last day of school.
No, I also didn't hate going to school. I also didn't love it. It's like one of those things like, well, I'm this old now. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And yes,
Yeah.
I got to see friends, but I was lucky enough that in elementary school, I kind of met my two best friends, or who would become my two best friends, and they literally lived a block away. And
Yeah.
then so I can see them whenever I wanted. And we often, the school was in between us. So we'd often in the summer just hang out on the playground at the school anyway. So, I mean, I get it because there's a lot of
Hmm.
friends I didn't see over the summer. And yes, this was a different time where like you had to have their house number to call and talk to their mom. Like, oh, is so and so there? Can we come out to play or ride your
Hmm.
bike over to their house and surprise them? So it was different, but I don't remember like being upset. I'm like, well, I'll see you in 3 months, like, or I'll see you around, kid. Like, I was just more excited to not have that time structure where I can wake up, watch
Hmm.
cartoons, play
Hmm.
outside, come in for lunch, play video games, go back outside, do whatever I want. That's what I was excited for.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that, when we were kids, you had to have the home phone number because my son, what he gets particularly upset about is that, yeah, like seeing friends that don't live in the neighborhood, which I
Hmm.
understand takes a little more effort, right? Because I've even talked to him about new friends he's made this year that do live in the neighborhood, but we don't exactly know them or know exactly which house there is. That, let me get in touch with the parents and we'll set something up because he and his friends had just been like making plans and like springing it on like me and other parents the day of. And we'd be like, oh my gosh, we're not even going to be home today. But he gets so worried that, he's not going to see some of these people all summer because to quote him, they don't know where my house is. And I keep trying to explain to him that cell phones exist now, texting is a thing. It's
Hmm.
so much easier for me to get in touch with someone's parent and like plan something.
Right.
And especially at least his school, you can opt into a directory, so that makes it easier too if he knows the kid's last name. And it's so funny to me because this is such a big concern of his. And back when we were kids, it was like, I don't even know how to get a hold of half of you, and neither does my
Mm.
mom. So
No.
yeah, see you in 3 months.
Right. So I could tell you all the fun stories I had over the summer break.
Yeah. And like, do you know how much easier it is for me as a parent to be able to send a text to a parent I don't know instead of like calling their house?
Yeah.
I think if texting didn't exist, I would have to tell my son that just gonna have to deal with it because I can't talk to all these people.
You have no friends for 3 months. Go to your
Yeah.
room.
I'm too introverted for this. Leave me alone.
Oh boy.
Ugh. Anyway. Okay, so back to our movie.
Oh no.
But yes, this opening song where they can't wait for school to end definitely jogged my memory. The other thing that hit me was when Plucky Duck is, I guess, kind of like walking home with Hammy, and he's like, what do you want to do this summer? Do you want to do this? Do you want to go camping? Do you want to just sit in front of the TV? And I don't know, that just brought me back to my childhood so hard because that is kind of what it felt like to me. Like, do you want to just have a TV day? Do you want to go ride bikes? And we didn't go places. We didn't have like a literal vacation usually. It was me running around with my friends, but it was like, well, what are we going to do today? Is it going to be a bike riding day? Are we going to go to the pool? Are we going to watch TV? And these felt like my main options. And I don't know. That brought me right back to childhood summers really.
Yeah, I would agree. It would be ride our bikes to the movie theater, go to the playground, or play video games in the basement. Sometimes all three, depending on the day.
Yeah.
But specifically, though, I think Plucky mentions either he mentions it or for some reason it gives me the vibes of MTV, and that definitely
Yes.
reminds me of summer.
Like the
What's it
summer
called?
break thing where they'd be like out at a beach
Yes.
and they'd like play music videos and then cut to like their stage on the beach where they'd have live performances and like people
Yeah.
dancing in the crowd. Yes, I remember that so much.
That or Nickelodeon's Summertime with Stick Stickly, where if you don't know what that is, it's a popsicle
Yeah.
stick with googly eyes on it, and he is your VJ for some reason, and it was great. That's all I can
But it
explain.
was great.
It
Yeah.
was great. So yeah,
We
I definitely agree with you when Plucky Duck lists all these things off. It's exactly how I felt as a kid. It's like
yeah.
now you have all this free time, you can do anything, but you're almost like you're static with what you're trying to figure out what to do.
Well, yeah, it's like in theory you could do anything, but in actuality you're a kid who can't drive. So you're a virgin who can't drive.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Because like we live close enough to the pool that my friends and I could ride our bikes to the city pool.
Hmm.
If that was not the case, the pool probably would not have been such a big part of my summers.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I didn't have that luxury. We had the playground.
okay. So I thought that Babs and Buster were brother and sister at first, revisiting this,
Hmm.
because there's the scene where they first start, going at each other with their water guns. And I think Babs runs into the rabbit hole, and there's like a mom with all the babies. And the way she scolds Buster, it made me think that was like their mom.
I can see that. I If you weren't sure or didn't know, I could totally see that because they do run into the rabbit hole, and there are lots of siblings, brothers and sisters, just you know, baby bunnies everywhere. I took it as because I know better from I remember watching the show, and every time they're introduced, it's no relation because they have the same last name of Bunny.
Right. Yeah.
It just reminded me of like being close to my two friends, and I feel like if we and this has happened actually, when we were being bad, I also got yelled at. Like
Oh,
collectively, we
yeah.
got yelled at in in the rabbit hole, if you will. It felt like the mom was just so familiar with Buster and Babs were like their playfulness, their
For
friendship, their
sure.
whatever it is that she's just also. I don't think she wanted a squirt gun in the house, so she was just going to yell at this kid anyway.
Oh, yeah. It's very funny to me as we're discussing this, that, like I'm the mom now in this situation. Because I'm thinking back to like what you're saying, like how you had friends that were so close that you were at each other's houses all the time, and I had friends like that. And now my son has friends like that, and I'm the mom part of it now.
I'm just letting that sink in for you.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm always so surprised that recording these episodes makes me feel old every damn time, but like it's literally the premise of the
Yeah.
show.
Well, I mean, not to feel old, but yeah. So after Plucky gives all these ideas of what to do for the summer break with his BFF Hammy. Hammy's like, "Well, no, Plucky, I'm going on vacation." He's like, "What? How could you leave me?" And I feel like there's a little, genuine sadness there. But then Hammy mentions they're going to Happy World Land. I think that gets dissolved quickly, and he just becomes jealous, Plucky Duck, and he
Hmm.
just wants to feign extra friendship because he kind of is like the boss of the two. He's the bossy one,
Okay.
and he's like, "Oh no, I'm gonna love you and miss you and blah 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 blah," because he just really wants to go.
Yeah.
And I love this little scene for the sight gag at the end. So he's like hanging onto his legs, and Hammy's like using a crowbar and a jackhammer and all these things to like get Plucky off of his legs. And at the end, he grabs the jaws of life, mechanical shark, and he uses like to grab Plucky on the butt and pick him up. And what's cool about this, what I think is funny, and I don't know if I caught this as a kid, but there's a lot of jokes towards our executive producer Spielberg, and this is
Hmm.
one of them. Like I said, the jaws of life. It's not something you rescue someone out of a burning car. It's a literal shark that he uses to pry Plucky off of his legs.
Hmm. Yep.
And I like that. Spielberg probably takes all this on the chin because there are a good amount of Spielberg-esque jokes through here, and I
Yes.
know for sure that was happening in Animaniacs. I feel like he was actually drawn to the show a few times.
Oh, I could see that. There's actually, speaking of being drawn into the show, a part where I think it's when Hammy's family is like first starting their trip. They're kind of driving through a desert, and you see them drive by like a recreation of the Sphinx. And but there's someone's face on it that is not the actual Sphinx face. My husband pointed it out, and we rewound it because I was like, well, maybe it's Steven Spielberg, because he said it was like a guy with a beard. I'm like, do you think they drew him into it? I did not recognize the face. It did not look like cartoon Steven Spielberg, so I don't know. Oh, but my one thing I wanted to point out about the water gun fight with Babs and Buster, I do like when I think it's Babs, she squirts what would be the camera, and you see a human hand reach around and like wipe it off. I
Mm-hmm.
like these little, I guess, breaking the fourth wall kind of things when it's a cartoon. I always thought that was so funny.
Yeah, I feel like they do that a couple times here, and definitely in the show. It reminds me of Looney Tunes. There's a few
Mm-hmm.
episodes I can remember of like Bugs battling the animator.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of that.
Yeah, yes.
So another character that seems to kind of be attached to the bunnies for whatever reason
Mm-hmm.
is Byron the dog.
Mm-hmm.
And Byron the dog doesn't really do a whole lot, but he's always there. and he's just
Yes.
always sleeping. But what I love about this character, like this seems like the lack of bone structure this dog has. It's like a lump of Play-Doh. I
Yeah.
think at one point it is like a lump around. I think it's Bab's foot. She like tries to shake him off or something like that, and just
Yeah,
like
and she doesn't know it's the dog. Yeah.
yeah, and then he curls back up and goes to sleep.
Yeah. I really like, oh, spoiler alert, because the dog ends up going on a grand adventure with the two bunnies. There are a few times where they're like falling and he just floats down like a leaf because, like you said, it's like he has no bone structure and like nothing phases him.
Mm-mm.
He's literally along for the ride. I had a dog like that. He did have bone structure, but he was very much just along for the ride. I was told he could have been a stuffed animal and
Oh
would have
wow,
saved our money.
wow.
Yeah. But I really like Byron. I think that was one of my kids' favorite parts too when we were watching it because, this it's a repeated gag that Byron's just like not bothered and they
No,
keep having to like pick him up and run with him and stuff because he's not going to do it himself. And every so often my son would be like, "Oh my gosh, is the dog like going to do anything?" Because he's also used to like our dog who like barks when someone walks by the house. So it's like this was a concept of a dog he had never seen before.
right, yeah. Most dogs aren't like Byron. I mean, maybe in their golden years.
Maybe. Is it weird that one of the characters is just a person? I had never actually thought about this. What's is her name Elmira?
Yes,
I mean, I remember her.
yeah.
It just never struck me that she's like the only person in this world of animals.
Well, so it didn't strike me as weird because she's in the TV show, and there's another human character, Montana Max.
Hmm.
He's in the movie, but doesn't have a speaker role. I think he's just like in the big shot where they're all running out of the school
Oh, okay.
at the when the clock strikes 3. But again, these are supposed to mirror Looney Tunes,
Hmm.
which you had Yosemite Sam and Elmer Fudd and other human esque tunes, if
Hmm.
you want to look at it that way.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's almost like tunes are their own like species, I guess,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
they can get run over or smashed with an anvil and be fine,
Okay. I'll go with
human
this.
or
Yeah,
animal.
human or
Yeah,
otherwise.
yeah.
Shirley. She's not Shirley. What is she? Shirley the Loon?
Yes, I think that's right.
Okay.
Shirley Loon. Yeah,
Um, I really enjoyed her whole persona, her like kind of new age hippie, like doing, I want to say it was like crystal ball readings for some cash over the summer. Also, especially after watching Clueless, just like watching everyone like walk along, boardwalk isn't the right word, but wherever she was set up and like there's that accident where Taz like spins all his hair off and he has to put a box over him and then all these people are like, "Oh, it's the box look." It just I kept getting Clueless vibes. Just California summer. That's apparently this is summer to me.
that's your
Even
vibes, man.
that's my vibes.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I almost said even though I've never lived in California, but I did. Forgot
Whoops.
about that. Yeah. It was like a year and a half of my life and it was Silicon Valley, not SoCal. So
Different vibes.
extremely different vibes.
There's a little bit of extra nostalgia here with Shirley for me, and I just got it now when you mentioned like she's working the booth, and even though I just watched the movie, I didn't think of it then. But it kind of, in a weird way, gives me Peanuts vibe with the therapist is in booth.
Yeah, that's a really good point. My son really likes Peanuts and like we watch all the holiday movies all year round just because he really likes them. And yeah,
Yeah,
that's such a good point. Okay. We need to talk about the pig family vacation, Hammy's family. I think we kind of glossed over the fact that Plucky Duck does end up going on vacation with Hammy and his family to Happy World Land. I think that Plucky thinks this is going to be like the best summer ever and very quickly realizes that I mean, like first of all, he's stuck in the back seat with Hammy's gross uncle, like his large pig uncle who like doesn't speak.
Uncle
Um
Stinky.
yeah, Uncle Stinky whose like clothes don't fit. It's very gross. But also like Hammy's family is a bunch of cheapskates.
I mean, that's part of the vibe I get. I think they're just kind of, lack of a better term, they're kind of square. They're just a bunch of like I don't know. They just Partly they're cheap, partly they are goody two shoes. They're taking their son and one of their brothers. I don't know who he's related to, Uncle Stinky, that is,
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
uh, across country to Happy Wonderland. So that itself costs some money, and maybe they're penny pinching along the way, which is also fine. You do what you can do, but everything like about Plucky's version of this road trip is not ideal. It's not what I would think of. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
weird. I mean, the fact that
it's
he tags
pretty bad.
along, first of all, it's like, you get what you get, Mr. Duck.
Sure, yeah. You invited yourself, yeah.
I don't even know if he had time to tell his parents that he was leaving for an entire summer.
Right, yeah.
Just bye.
But yeah, they end up, and like no shame, packing your own food, because we do that quite a few times when we're traveling to see my in-laws. For us, it's more so about saving time so that our time is spent more with people and not driving. We've been on a lot of road trips, like down to see the in-laws, going to out of town weddings, and I had to explain to my son that it's not so weird to him that they pack food, because again, we do that to save time. But they pull up to this restaurant just to order waters. And I was explaining that. I was explaining how they wouldn't let Plucky drink water because they didn't want to have to like stop more for the bathroom. And that is one thing that, like, I love a road trip personally, but I'm going to stop when I have to stop. I'm not going to be one of those people that like doesn't say anything about needing a pit stop because I don't want to inconvenience you. Like, no, I'm going to be comfortable on this road trip. I'm going to have food. I'm going to stop and use the bathroom when I need to. I also am I have certain gas station chains I will stop at because I know their bathrooms are better.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah,
I don't think I'm like super particular in any other like ways in my life, but yeah, I've been on enough cross country trips at this point that some places you just know it's not going to be a good time. So, but also that being said, I had to explain to my kid when the pig family got out to clean the bathrooms. Like, he didn't understand what they were doing. He was like, "Why are they like suiting up to go in the bathrooms?" I'm like, "Imagine if we scrubbed the entire public bathroom clean before we used it." And he was like, "Oh my God, we'd never get anywhere."
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I agree. I do like a good road trip, which does include packing food. Usually, I grab like road snacks. Yeah, sometimes road trip food is like the best food. I don't know. You go to certain like travel
Yeah,
stations; they're busy, so the food is fresh and hot. It's like not the best food by means of like nutritional value, but
of
you're on a road
course.
trip. What are you gonna do? I often, like you, don't care about the when I get there. I often will leave early. Like, you look at a map. Oh, it takes 7 hours. You know it's going to take longer than that because you got to stop,
Of
get
course.
gas, use the
Yeah.
restroom, eat. A 5 minute pit stop is always like 20 minutes. It is. There's some like you lose time. It's a whole new world.
Yeah. There are some things that, our pig family does that I can understand. But like for the most part, like I said, if we're not driving for like, a holiday where we only have so many vacation days to spend with people, we take our time too. We found some like hidden gem local restaurants that way, gone off the beaten path.
Yeah,
I do really like though when they have to hold their breath because they're going through a tunnel, like hold your breath, make a wish, which is, I know that's a thing. I just have not heard that in a really long time.
really long.
But surprise, it's a 7-mile bridge. Everyone has a
Right.
hard time. But at the end, Plucky says something like, "Oh, well, you guys didn't get your wish either." And Hammy says, "Oh, we wished, that something really sappy, like that we all get to spend time together and have a good time together." And he says, "For the love of Norman Rockwell."
Yeah, which I don't think I got at whatever age I watched this, but I mean, I got the context that he's making fun of their sappiness because he couldn't hold his
Yes.
breath for all 7 miles. So, which his wish, of course, was to go to Happy World Land. They would get there ASAP, I suppose. I don't know. I guess kids think that if you make a wish, it happens automatically because the pigs make it through the tunnel, and that's the line he gives. But then they have
Mhm.
to remind Uncle Stinky so he doesn't have to hold his breath anymore. And this guy is like all sorts of different green and purple and all these different colors. So he finally lets out his breath, and I'm assuming he lives up to his name, and it breathes it on Plucky, who then is now void of color.
Yeah.
to where Hammy has to like repaint him again, like kind of a fourth wall thing. They're not looking at the
Mm-hmm,
camera,
mm-hmm.
but oh, remember, kids, this is a cartoon and we have to add color. But what I like here is Hammy asks Bucky if he's okay, and his response is, "Auntie M, is that you?"
Yeah.
Figured we had to keep honing in on this theme of how popular Wizard of Oz is
Wizard of Oz everywhere.
everywhere, even in Steven Spielberg cartoons.
I guess we should mention before I bring up this other part I really like, Buster and Babs have a water fight that really goes off the rails and they end up like flooding Acme Acres, but not really, apparently, like just for them. uh
Something happens. I mean, it's flooded, but then later when they come back, it's not. They fixed it.
yeah, sure. But they end up just floating downriver, turns into a very Huck Finn kind of situation.
Hmm.
But at the start of their journey, they go down a waterfall and they're like yelling for help, and Superman pops up to help them. And Babs complains that it's not his show, so he just drops them and leaves.
Yeah. So there's a back and forth here, and Buster grabs Babs. He's like, "I got you," and she says, "But who's got you?" And then that's when Superman comes in.
Okay.
Didn't realize that these lines are given by Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder from the Superman film.
Oh,
So like they redo the lines as Superman's grabbing them.
nice.
I feel like I've seen the original Superman, but if I did, it's a long time ago in a galaxy not
Yeah.
too far away. And I didn't like, didn't love those movies. Batman was my jam, especially a decade plus later.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know I saw that Superman movie at some point as a kid. Also, I feel like Superman and the sequels were on TV a lot.
Hmm.
We've talked about like TNT, USA, TBS. I'm sure I feel like they were like all the Jaws movies. They were just always on. So I'm sure I saw parts of them too. But it's funny because I just finished reading this book called James, which is it's a novel. It's a retelling of the Huck Finn story, but from the point of the slave Jim. I read Huck Finn in high school. I remember it just being such a slog. I really didn't enjoy it. Again, maybe something I should reread now that I'm older, but maybe I don't feel like it. But I just remember, the vernacular like being so hard to get through for as much as I remembered not liking Huck Finn. I really liked this book. But it was funny having just finished that and then watching these two float down the river and make all these Huck Finn references. Obviously, a completely different set of circumstances.
Right. Yes.
Um, but it's just funny how it almost like Wizard of Oz, this cultural touchstone
Hmm.
that a journey down a river, you're going to like reference Huck Finn. Like, I don't know.
Also, apparently, we're going to reference Deliverance, and I do not know how, but I know as a kid I understood the reference, and I promise you I didn't see that movie when I was watching Tiny Toon. But yeah, when he goes up and he starts, was he like playing his ears and lip, and he's making all these noises, and then the little baby possum is
Yeah.
repeating them on the banjo. Like somehow knew, and especially later when he gets to the possum family and they're all trying to eat him, like that's more of the quote unquote scarier part. Like I knew this was
Right.
something to do with the movie Deliverance, and I don't know how I knew that. It was kind of very much in the same vein as like when we watched Muppet Babies as a kid. And they actually had like clips of other movies it cut in when they went on their adventures. They would pretend they're in Star Wars or whatever, and yeah, that's something I'm familiar with. But there are other movies they referenced and even like included in the show that I've never seen, but I knew about. Like when they shrink down and go into one of their friends' bodies to help them because they were sick.
Mm-hmm.
That's a movie. I've never even seen that movie. I've only seen clips from Muppet Babies, but I knew it existed as a kid, and I don't know how. Like
Yeah.
I don't know how I knew so much pop culture as someone who didn't have the internet growing up.
That's a good point. I also remember understanding the Deliverance reference, but for my household, there is a story that everyone likes to tell about my dad taking my mom to see Deliverance at the theaters, and she was terrified. I have never seen Deliverance. I definitely wouldn't have seen it as a kid because my mom would have like never allowed it, especially, based on her personal experience. But my mom is like so not good with any kind of scary movie. Like I'm a scaredy cat, but I will like kind of fight through things to be like, oh, but I heard this is a good movie or whatever,
Yeah.
I can still appreciate the movie despite it maybe not being something I would just like watch alone on any given night. Like I do have to, there are parameters that have to be set for me to watch a scary movie. It has to be daylight. My husband has to be there, at least some other person. So you see where I'm going with this.
Hmm.
But that all being said, yes, there's this like story everyone likes to tell in my household about how my mom's terrified by Deliverance, and my dad will be like, "Yeah, man, she just hears like those notes start up, and she's like, oh no,' and it like brings it all back, and he gives her such a hard time about this movie, and those banjo notes like that's been copied
Hmm.
other places, right? Like throughout pop culture. So she probably had like a whole episode like knowing that her children were watching this like riff on Deliverance, but she probably had to leave the room. But I was watching this rewatch with my husband and my kid, and my husband was like, that possum even looks like the kid from Deliverance, and
Yes.
he brought him up on his phone, and he does.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my kid, like, he obviously has no idea what Deliverance is, but he really enjoyed the part that you mentioned with them playing the music and, Buster's like playing his body as an instrument. And my son said something like, I don't know why, but I think they're in really big trouble. And I was
Hmm.
like, yeah, because they just look mean,
Yeah.
you know. The bunnies eventually escape, but I think it's so funny that like Babs does all the work and then she literally has to run back to like the dilapidated house to grab Buster because like he's
Right.
still playing music and like,
Yeah,
oh,
he's
this
just
is
having a good
great.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a new
Um,
friend.
yeah. But throughout their journey down the river, you see like, a pair of eyes in the dark, like kind of following them. But my son latched onto that and he's like, "Oh no, it's coming. Oh, it's coming." And like I feel like this experience for my son was almost like a horror movie. Like, I mean, he enjoyed it. He didn't seem to be scared, but it was just funny to me that like to me it was like this fun kids movie, this silly thing, and it seems like he got really into like the darker parts of it.
So, like the movies in a couple segments, these are two of the bigger ones I think that I latch onto for sure. Where it's Plucky and his road trip of hell. I guess like he wants this awesome road trip, and everyone's experiencing joy and fun, but Plucky is not. And then you have the bunnies on their river rafting excursion, but like they're just trying to get eaten, or they're not trying to. People are trying to eat them, I should say.
they're, they're over it. They're just
Yeah,
trying to get
please
eaten.
eat me. I'm done. Um, but yeah, most of the time, like Babs is the one kind of stressed, and Buster is laissez-faire, and he's like looking danger in the mouth, quite literally, and
Or not
he's
even
like,
realizing it.
exactly. He's just kind of just go with the flow. He's like, oh yeah, we're playing banjo. Well, they're trying to cook me alive. That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. I guess we should mention the little side story about Fifi, the skunk, going to this hotel to find her movie star crush. Is it
Yes,
Johnny Pugh?
Johnny Pugh.
This is probably like my least favorite of all the side stories.
Yeah, the two smaller
She,
stories are
yeah, she ends up in his hotel and she's like trying to get in to see him, and she like tries all these different ways to sneak in. There's a point where she pretends to be his agent and his real agent is already there, so like whoops, but then it's like a gag that the agent is a large woman and sits on her.
yes, she gets squashed.
Yeah, which I don't know. Okay. And
That was a popular thing in cartoons, especially like when the
yeah,
cartoons are little, like animals that
yes.
people, specifically like larger people, squish them.
Yeah. Yeah, I had that thought too when I was watching this, that like fat jokes were like a so much more common. I don't know. I guess if you're a kid, butts are funny, large butts are funnier. I don't know. Um
What do you mean as a kid?
but then also while this is happening, like Roseanne is singing the national anthem on a balcony and falls off of it.
Yeah, to also squish Fifi.
Yeah, did not get at first that this was Roseanne, but also I guess probably at the time this was made, that national anthem debacle was more recent.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yes.
Because I've heard of it. It's not like it's something I think about a lot or anything.
No.
But then Fifi also ends up in a room with like every popular talk show host ever.
Yeah, this part was weird because I feel like you're right. She went to the hotel, but then I also feel like somehow she ends up in the studio because she literally walks through what would be like a talk show situation.
Mhm.
And so maybe she went to see him at his studio, and his it's not a hotel room. He was in his dressing room, but I feel like that. I don't know. I'm getting the two scenes are so back to back. I'm getting confused at how she ends up in the hotel lobby and into this talk show situation.
Yeah.
But I guess it doesn't matter. But yeah, this is like this segment and the other one with Shirley later on. They're like throwaway segments, and like the animators are just literally drawing anybody they think they can do a caricature of, or that one of the voice actors can do an impression of. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I could
Because like
see that.
to your point, they walk through this studio and it's like what was it, Leno and Letterman and Arsenio Hall and I just all these people that
Johnny
have their
Carson,
yeah, and they all
Barbara
have their own
Walters, Oprah.
shows,
Mhm.
but now they're all on the one show together. I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, Barbara Walters, that her and Oprah were not very good in the show.
Okay, yes. The Oprah impression bothered me so much because I feel like it didn't even sound like Oprah.
Mm-mm.
And then, like, they just had her crying, which, like, maybe she cried a lot during her show. I don't really remember, but, like,
I don't remember either.
yeah, I don't know. This scene was odd. Maybe, I mean, I'm sure that all of these people were a little bit bigger at the time because TV was totally different at the time. Talk shows were bigger at the time.
Huge.
Um, yes, but I don't know. It was just odd, like you said, were they just showing off that they could like do impressions of people? Obviously, my son had no idea what any of this meant.
No, there's no way. I think as a kid, I knew most of these. Again, just because they're on TV, I didn't watch any of these late night shows,
Hmm.
mostly because they were late night shows and I had to go to school the next day. But you still knew of them. You'd see during daytime TV or even Saturday morning cartoons, like commercials with these people on them for their shows. So it's like
Yeah,
you didn't,
definitely.
yeah, I knew who all these people were, but
Hmm.
they're just like quick sight gags.
Yeah, I wanted to point out this little bit on the Pig Family Road Trip
Hmm.
where Plucky offers some comic books for Hammy to read. Hammy gets car sick, and Plucky offers him like a little cup, a little plastic cup to barf in.
Yeah,
I will forever think of Wayne's World now with that.
you are welcome. Yeah, I just also wanted to point out that comic book just because it's clearly a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle kind of either poke fun at or ode to, but they're called radioactive samurai slugs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it looks like a they're green and they have like little bandanas on, so they clearly look like Raphael and Michelangelo, but gross slugs.
Yes. I totally missed that.
Besides Batman, I was a big Ninja Turtle fan as
I
a
was
kid.
too. I was so into Ninja Turtles. I think I had a Ninja Turtle birthday party at one point.
Hell yeah.
So I wanted to bring up this whole part of the bunnies ending up at this, like, they call it a southern mansion. It's basically like a plantation house, but it's really run down.
Hmm.
Babs says something like, it looks like a nice place to live if you've got a bolt through your neck, which she's talking about like Frankenstein. And I don't really understand that. This does not look like Frankenstein's like lair to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I get it as a reference to something scary, sure. But why this southern mansion would make her think of Frankenstein's monster is a little bit beyond me. I think typically we think of castles, but I don't even think that's what it was in the book.
No. Yeah,
But
because I was thinking about castles too, and then I'm like, am I just thinking of Dracula? Like, am I just getting my references all messed up?
no, I think in like the classic movies, it's kind of portrayed as a castle, like the Big Laboratory, and then like that. I don't know.
Mm,
It did stick out to me as well. Like, why does a plantation house look like
Frankenstein,
Frankenstein?
yeah.
I don't know.
But more importantly, I discovered a movie connection here that I'm ridiculously excited about. In this rundown Southern Frankenstein house, there are three alligator sisters, and
Hmm.
they're like Big Daddy, and
Hmm.
immediately Big Daddy's voice sounds so familiar to me. And I'm like, you know what? This sounds like the sheriff from Scooby Doo and the Boo Brothers. And I
Hmm.
do not know if you're familiar with that movie.
I'm familiar
Um,
with it. I don't remember watching it, but I'm familiar with it. But I might have seen it once or twice as like a little kid and forgot about it.
this movie was such a big part of my childhood. Like, anytime we went to the video store, we had Video Castle, which was like a local video store for a
Oh
while.
yeah.
If I didn't know what to rent, I got Scooby Doo and the Boo Brothers. Like, I do not know why we didn't just own it on video at that point, but like, I watched Scooby Doo and the Boo Brothers all the time. And I do have it on DVD now because my son went through a Scooby Doo phase. He especially wanted to find any that had Scrappy Doo. He really likes Scrappy. But we've watched Scooby Doo and the Boo Brothers together. And so I go and look up this Big Daddy alligator voice actor, and it is the sheriff in Boo Brothers. And I don't know if I've ever been more excited about something. I feel like Scooby Doo and the Boo Brothers is such a deep cut. Like, no one ever knows what I'm talking about when I bring it
Hmm.
up. And then it's the same voice actor. And I was way too excited about this. Also, the man who does this voice is like not even Southern. So, like,
Oh no.
I don't know. Yeah, good for you, sir.
Well, it's funny because you were really crazy about this guy. Let me look up who this is. And I didn't know he wasn't Southern because he typically voices these kind of roles.
Yeah.
Or more famously, he is known as Boss Hogg in The Dukes of Hazzard.
Like the TV show?
Hmm.
I've never seen the show.
I mean, I didn't. That wasn't my thing, but again, we know of it. We know it exists. We know Boss
Mhm.
Hogg is
Yeah.
the big Southern villain. So yeah, he just definitely has a kind of reoccurring theme here of he's typecast, I guess you could say.
Yeah, there you go. I don't care. He's gonna be Sheriff Bugsby from Boo Brothers.
Nice.
Always to me.
These alligator sisters, they are enthralled with Buster and they want to marry him, which is weird because they're kids. I guess don't think too hard about it.
No.
What I liked is again as another situation of maybe not breaking the fourth wall proper of like talking to the audience, but acknowledging that we're a cartoon or things in cartoons are differently. Like Winnie the Pooh has a sweater but no pants on.
Mhm.
Buster also has a sweater and no pants on, and a couple
Mhm.
times one of the sisters like referenced that he has no pants, and it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we don't really think about it because they're a cartoon animal, and then when you point it out, you're like, oh, yeah, I guess he doesn't have pants on.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I was just gonna say that's such a thing too across cartoons where there's like shirt, no pants. And for some reason we all just accept this. Probably just used to seeing it. But yeah, I did think it was very funny that they actually like pointed out.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of goofy, and they mention it again later on, I believe, too. Like, well, my pantsless hero's here, or something like that.
Mhm.
But they're all like tugging at him and arguing who gets to marry him, and then Big Alligator Daddy or
Big
Big Boo Brother,
Daddy.
Big Daddy. Okay,
Big Boo Brother. No, he is the sheriff.
sorry, Big Daddy. He determines who gets to marry him by just simply asking which one of y'all haven't been married in a while. So
What
like,
happened to all the others?
well, they are alligators, and I think they get married and then eat their kind of like a very praying mantis Black Widow thing. I think they eat their husbands
I'm
because none of
probably
them are currently married, to my knowledge,
right.
and they also try to eat the bunnies. So
But this brings us to my personal favorite part of the movie, Elmira going to this like drive-through safari kind of thing. Obviously, she gets out of the car because she needs a new cat for a pet. We haven't mentioned it. If you're not familiar, she loves animals, but loves them too hard. And I just thought all of this was so funny. Like she's defeating these big predators one by just being like a horrible like toddler kind of kid. Like I feel like if you've ever had like a toddler that like ever been in charge of, like, oh my God, like toddler energy is that's how we are describing Elmira.
hmm.
She defeats, I think, like two or three like large cats and then ends up, I don't know, rounding up like some babies and a bunch of other jungle animals and reads a book to them. And at one point, there's a gazelle in the book, and she goes up to this tied up gazelle and tells it to kiss himself because of the gazelle picture in the book and just slams the book repeatedly into its face. And I
Yeah.
was like, God, this is what it's really like.
Hmm. Kiss
um,
yourself. Kiss yourself. Kiss yourself.
it was- and then I love when they all like get to the lion that, is like in charge here, the king of the jungle, and they're trying to explain everything that happened to them, but like without using words. And they like one of them slaps himself in the face to like demonstrate like what happened to the gazelle. But yeah, the lion is like, "What the heck's wrong with all you guys? I'll take care of this." And then she like gives him a haircut and that's it. Like he's done.
Yeah.
Like I
He
don't know. I love her chaos.
one of the animals complaining is, I think maybe in boxer shorts, whatever, is like basically naked. It's a cheetah because like he went
Mhm.
to run from her and she grabs him by the tail
Oh
and like
yeah.
the skin rips off. So now she's wearing the cheetah's skin through the whole segment like a
Yep.
onesie.
Yep.
Yeah, she is definitely chaos. She's like using the tails to jump rope and skipping around, singing, "I love cats, I love kitties, squeeze them into itty bitties." And
Yeah.
that's literally what she does. She just like gets them in a headlock and tells them how much she loves them. And they're like, "I can't with you. This is too much."
Yeah. In this section, though, it's almost like she isn't exactly even doing anything too bad to some of them. She really just like loved them too hard.
Hmm.
And like, they ended up losing their skin or like losing their hair, whatever.
Right. Or they're just terrified of her
Yeah,
or annoyed.
exactly.
So we cut back to the road trip, the misadventures of Plucky Duck. And for some reason, he can, like, I think you said earlier, he can't get water because they're afraid to make bathroom stops. But then this is the scene that they're cleaning the bathroom, and
Hmm.
he is stuck in the car. I think the seatbelt won't unbuckle, or I think they have like those old school leather seats, and I think his butt is like stuck to it. You know, they get all sweaty and stick to those
Hmm.
seats. And he sees a water fountain. He's trying to like drink it from the distance, like a cartoon style, crane his neck, his tongue, etc. Whatever. But it's a cool shot from behind the dripping faucet. It's like through the teardrop of water into
Mm.
the car. And it looks, I don't know, it stood out to me that in this watch. It was just something they did a little extra in their animation. I really thought it was really cool.
Hmm.
They get back in the car and just a little Looney Tune reference with Elmer Fudd and K Fudd Wadio.
Hmm.
I want to mention this next part because I found some notes here. They're driving around and they're taking their sweet ass time, and Plucky pulls out a map and he's trying to tell them how to get there, how it would be faster. And I don't know what the dad's name is. We'll call him Pig. We'll call him Pig Daddy. Um, he explains like he knows where he's going, this and this, and gives him the kind of the route. And Plucky mentions that by this way, we'll finally get there by April 6th, 2021. So I looked that up. And at the time when it was released in 92, 29 years into the future, coincidentally, the date ended up being about 6 months after the real life announcement of Tiny Toon's revival series by Warner Brothers in October 2020.
Okay.
So I kind of
Interesting.
find it funny that they threw this random date out there, and almost 29 years later to the day, they re released a new batch of Tiny Toon Adventures.
Mm, I
If they
see.
would have waited 6 more months, it would have been perfect.
Yep. So this is where the pig family picks up a hitchhiker.
Of course they would.
Of course they would. Who ends up being like a psycho killer.
Yeah, he's like a cross between Leatherface, John Ryder the Hitcher from The Hitchhiker, and Jason Voorhees. He's like a little mix of all three of them.
Hmm. Yeah, I was worried that this was going to freak my son out. It did not, surprisingly. I mean, he looks deranged, but then also later he puts on the Jason mask, and like, I thought that was going to freak my kid out, honestly. And he's also, he has a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, but poor Plucky is just like at the mercy of this guy, and the pig family is completely unaware. I did think it was funny though that they are listening to a radio report of like this killer on the loose and what he looks like and everything, and Plucky's realizing, this is the guy because the description matches. And then the mom pig shuts off the radio and says, "There's so much sensationalism in the media these days."
Yeah.
Um,
And for some reason, pig or pig products like bacon, sausage, etc., trigger him. It's
yeah,
just
which
such
is
a random thing.
the most random thing. And then I did think it was so funny though that like every time he like revs the chainsaw, he's like naming a pig product. And he gets to
Yeah.
like at one point he's like carnitas.
And then somehow casually mentions to Plucky that also ducks have the same reaction to him. So then he chases Plucky around the car.
Go figure. This little bit though where Plucky he sends a letter, he calls it an SOS to his girlfriend Shirley back home to come save
Mm-hmm.
them. First of all, this, he puts it in a random mailbox. Some like mail carrier and a bike picks it up. Then the mail carrier gets into a mail truck. The roadrunner is in front of the mail truck and he gets run over by this mail
Yeah.
truck. And it
Yeah.
is apparently the first time the roadrunner has ever gotten run over.
That's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah.
Years of
uh,
avoiding the coyote, and
yeah. And wonder why they decided for this to be it. But
that's why
uh,
they got canceled. They broke the rule of Roadrunner.
there you go. So this letter makes its way to Shirley, like just on the street. She starts to read it, and then what's the annoying guy who wants to go out with her?
Oh, Foulmouth.
Okay. Foulmouth grabs her to take her to the movies, and she just drops it. Like, she just lets it go on the street.
Come on, Charles.
Yeah.
Mm.
But also, she and Plucky are together, but Foulmouth is trying to go on a date with her.
I don't know.
You don't. Okay.
I mean, I feel like he said a letter to my girl, and he's put it in the
Right.
mailbox. But then Foulmouth, I don't know. Maybe they're just friends, and he wants to just go to a movie with his friend. I can't tell. The relationships with these cartoons are weird. Like half the time, it seems like Buster and Babs are like would they, won't they type deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Buster looks like he like wants to show her affection, but then he's like a just a normal teenage boy, and sprays her with a squirt gun again and makes her mad. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So Foulmouth and Shirley get to this movie theater, and I did like these celebrity cameos when they're like walking past a row of people in the theater, like Jack Nicholson, Cher, Meryl Streep, Pee Wee, and Woody Allen,
Yeah,
which like a couple of those probably wouldn't be in there now.
if you're gonna make fun of Spielberg, you also probably have the rights to make fun of Lucas, because they're
Mm.
buds, right? And instead of the when the movie starts of saying THX, it just says Thud,
Yeah.
and then like the TH logo font, and it's like really really loud, and then it goes, the audience is now deaf, which is just silly.
Speaking of silly, there's like this commercial that plays before the movie starts, and this guy's out on a lake or something fishing, and you see Babs and Buster in the background on their raft, like, help.
Yeah,
I really
yeah,
like that.
that was good.
There's also a thing about not smoking during the movie, and it's like so crazy to me that like indoor smoking like was a thing. I mean, I remember it. I remember being at like concerts in high school where people were smoking inside, so it's like obviously I lived through it. It just seems like such a relic from another time. I don't know.
Going to Denny's and asking for the non-smoking section.
Yeah.
I like the movie they're watching or attempting to watch, the
Mhm.
Skunkophobia, which I'm fairly certain it's like a spoof of arachnophobia.
That's what I was thinking too.
But while the main character in the movie they're watching is like driving around, I couldn't help but like think they are purposely doing like a psycho-esque theme music here. It sounds close, but not quite.
Hmm.
I thought that was fun, and apparently it's like a scary movie that this foul mouth has seen multiple times because he is jumping the gun and ruining it for everybody. Like, oh, this part, watch this part. This part's good.
Yeah. This is also when Fifi finally gets rid of Johnny Pugh. She had run into him, I don't know, like a while back, and instead of just getting his autograph, he kind of turned her into his like assistant.
Yeah,
And she's carrying around all this stuff for him at the movies. He ends up basically like hitting on some other skunk. And she kicks him to the curb, like literally, and he runs into Elmira.
yeah. It's like a back-to-back thing. The audience kicks out foul mouth for just
Hmm.
running his mouth and ruining the movie,
Hmm.
and then Fifi kicks out the pew,
Hmm.
and she literally catches him as like on the fly. She like just grabs
Hmm.
him out of thin air, and
Yeah.
she's hello, Mister Stinky Face Kitty Man, and just gives him all the hurtful affection that she tends to do
Yep.
to giant kitty cats or skunks.
Yeah. My son was like, but that's not a cat. She can't have a skunk as a pet. I'm like, it's gonna be fine.
But it's okay to
Probably
give a
not for
lion a
him.
haircut.
Right. It's okay to wear this cheetah skin.
Freshly made cheetah suit. Yeah,
Yep. So now we have a calendar show up telling us it's September. I'm kind of curious how long their summer break is, seeing that.
4 episodes long.
Okay. I'm just saying, we always went back at the end of August, like the last week in August.
Yeah, because then you go back on Thursday or Friday, meet your teacher. They give you a list
Hmm.
of supplies. You have a 3-day weekend off. And you
Right,
start on
because,
Tuesday.
yeah, Labor
Yeah.
Day weekend was always like our first weekend of the school year. So, yeah, Babs and Buster and the dog end up on this river boat. The captain is a toad that is like legitimately creepy looking to me. Even my son, like when the toad came out, he was like, "Oh my gosh, this is gonna be bad. I don't think they should trust this guy." And I was like, "No, because he looks scary." I guess while all this is going on too, the pig family finally gets to Happy World Land. That's what it's called, right? I had a feeling they were gonna end up just like turning right back around and going home. At first, I thought they were just gonna take that picture in the parking lot and then like be like, okay, we saw it, bye, and turn
Yeah.
around and go home. But basically, they ride like the monorail, and then they tell Plucky they have to leave because they got to save something for next time.
Right.
This poor duck.
This poor duck.
Hmm.
Yeah. On the steamboat, they are forced to do like a show for the audience, and Babs is loving it
Hmm.
because she wants to, that's the life she wants to leave behind Acme and be a superstar. So this is her
Okay.
break, so to speak. And then they hit the house lights on,
Hmm.
and it's like a bunch of predator-looking animals, but also specifically the possum family and the alligator family.
Hmm. When the lights came on, my son was like, I knew it.
They get cornered, and finally the dog does something, like swoops down, kind of like Superman style, and rescues him off the boat and takes him
Hmm.
back to shore or something like that. And I think Buster says Byron can fly. Who knew?
Yeah.
Even though, like you mentioned, we've seen him. Well, I guess he was floating before, but he legit is like flying. He saves them, and
Hmm.
he goes back to sleep. Of course, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. He has this moment of like being a real living creature and then back to Flat Byron.
Yeah, I think when they're
Um,
flying, they go past the full moon, and I think they run into ET and Elliot.
the bunnies end up on like a like going through a mine, but the serial killer is chasing them at this point somehow. Is that correct? Remember when they're in the mine, they're each in a mining car?
Yeah, I'm trying to think
Okay.
how the serial killer got there. Oh, because they kicked him out of the car, and so he's
Mm,
I don't know. The
right.
story's intertwined somehow now.
Yeah, but I like this part where, they go through a tunnel and Buster says to make a wish. And then when they get out of the tunnel, Babs is like, "Ooh, a mall, my wish came true." And he's like, "What the heck?" And so, like, during this, like, ride around this mine car, apparently they go through the mall. And then she gets him a bunch of like new stuff. And he's like, "What is this? This is a box." And she's like, "It's the box, look," which is a reference all the way back to the beginning
Yeah,
when, Taz had it on and they were all like, "Oh, it's a new fad." I just thought that was so funny.
yeah. It's like they're piecing all the parts together now here at the closing segment.
Hmm.
So they get back home, the pig family, from the road trip of a lifetime, and Plucky Duck is so excited to be home, and he starts kissing the lawn. And by home, I mean the pig home. Like, I don't know
Hmm.
where Plucky lives, if he
He
lives
hasn't
anywhere at all.
walked over to his house yet.
Yeah, and he's kissing the lawn, and then the pig daddy mentions that they just had it fertilized, which I don't know how, because they were gone for seems like 3 months.
Someone came by.
Yeah, but yeah, then he like Plucky sticks out his tongue, and there's like grass growing on it now. So he like takes a little lawnmower and mows his tongue, and then looks directly into the camera and says, "Tongue joke number 10."
Yeah, that was good.
I mean, obviously earlier in the film they're doing random stuff with tongues like cartoons do, but again,
Hmm.
breaking the fourth wall, making us aware we're watching a cartoon. It, for some reasons, silly and extra fun for me,
Yeah.
especially as an adult. I think as a kid I got a kick out of it, but didn't quite understand the nuance of it.
But this poor duck, he's so ready to go home. And then they're like, "No, wait, you have to stay and watch the slideshow." And it looks like the slideshow takes a solid 24 hours because, like, it's day and night. And I don't know. And then they just have to go right back to school.
Yeah, this poor duck.
And we find out that the pig family gave the serial killer Plucky's address.
Yes.
So, like, they go back to school and the killer's there, like, chasing him around.
Yeah. During the slideshow, I forget who says it, but one of them says "head towards the light"
Mhm.
from Poltergeist. Spielberg again.
Oh,
They're like
yeah.
towards the end of this thing, they're really hammering in, like, "Hey, do you know the Spielberg guy? Because we're gonna give you all the references in the last 3 minutes."
Yeah. Do you know that Spielberg guy? So, since we're at the end of our movie, I had alluded to a deep dive I took about the end of Tiny Toons.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to hear this whole convoluted story?
I am a bit nervous, but yes, let's roll it.
Okay. So we had mentioned before it was supposedly canceled to make way for Animaniacs. There's a really big internet rumor, if you look into Tiny Toons at all, that it was canceled because a man named Dennis Falk stalked and harassed the woman who voiced Babs Bunny, Tress McNeil. There's also a rumor that the stalker was a man who regularly attended furry conventions under the name Captain Chipmunk. The final Tiny Toon special, which is a Halloween spoof called Night Ghoulery, there is a character which is kind of like a big fat animation fan, basically. Supposedly, that's supposed to be a caricature of the stalker, like they were poking fun at him. In Night Ghoulery, this guy is the world's biggest Tiny Toon fan. There are rumors that Tress McNeil, the voice actor in particular, had to stop attending fan conventions because she was scared for her own safety, and that all of this convinced them to cancel the show because this was like all getting out of hand. Okay. As I said, I went down a rabbit hole. There is a deep dive on YouTube. It's called The Tiny Toon Stalker Terror from 1994, which, like, which is a heavy title, okay?
A super heavy title.
Yeah, if you're interested in checking this out, the user is Bernie Vids, like the name Bernie Vidz on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube. I wasn't going to watch this because it started playing and the music was scary and I was home alone. But I got past it. I watched the whole thing.
Proud of you.
Thank you. It's actually not scary at all. But this Bernie Vids guy basically tried to follow the rumors to their origin. What he discovered is that they all started as claims without any sources or backup on message boards, which very much an early internet thing. So let me see if I can explain this in a way that makes sense. It's difficult to follow. It also involves a lot of like sexual furry things and erotic Tiny Toons fan fiction. The
Okay.
furry communities were fighting and the fan fiction communities were fighting, and this Dennis Falk character was involved as a prominent fan fiction writer for Tiny Toons erotica. It gets really weird, deeply weird. So Dennis Falk is a real person. Apparently what seems to have happened is he pissed off someone in the furry community, and they started just writing things about him on message boards, and he doesn't know why exactly he was targeted. There again, like when the maker of this video tried to follow everything back to the source, they couldn't find anything beyond just baseless claims about this person Dennis Falk. But the rumor is taken on such a life of its own that if you look at any articles about Tiny Toons, like the Wikipedia, they'll all tell you it was canceled because of this stalking incident, which had actually never happened. There's no proof it ever happened. I think he said he went to one or two meet and greets his entire time, or the entire time that the show was airing. And it was just like a regular thing where you like wait in line, you get your autograph, you go home. That was it.
Okay. Okay.
It is true that at one of the meet and greets he went to, Tress McNeil was not there. And they were all kind of like, oh, that stinks because she's a major voice actor. But he's like, it didn't go beyond that. So the weird thing is that this Dennis Falk guy, because he was one of like the first people to really do like fan fiction, and fan fiction was a new thing. Obviously, People didn't really get it. They thought it was weird because he was writing erotic fan fiction about cartoon bunnies. So he actually kind of pioneered like fair use laws for fan fiction, because when this all started, Warner Brothers like went after him, started posting cease and desist letters on fan sites, but the public image of these characters is also like they were trying to say that was their intellectual property. But from what I understand with fair use laws, you're allowed to satire things, you're allowed to talk about things like we do on this podcast without it being considered a violation of licensing. So, as weird as all this got, it was like apparently he ended up almost being like a crusader for like early, not only fan fiction, but like message boards, online fandoms. Cause like this is how people had an online fandom at the time, right? Was message boards.
Hmm.
We didn't have social media.
No.
So he ended up being the main voice for, the opposition to these like supposed impending lawsuits arguing fair use applied. Part of why they think these allegations took off, though, and this whole story about him being a stalker and the reason the show was canceled, I guess Tiny Toons, the staff really did interact with fans much more than other shows did. There's an episode that was written by 3 13-year-old girls who were just fans of the show and like sent in their story idea. Yeah. They did tour a lot and they did do a lot of meet and greets. So I think once this story gained traction, it was like easy for people to believe.
Okay.
Um, and also coupled with the fact that Tiny Toons was in its prime when it got canceled, it was still getting good ratings. So like people were confused at the time too why it was being canceled so in their mind canceled very abruptly. We had mentioned, it seems like the real reason was that they wanted to switch focus to Animaniacs. The creator of the show was quoted as saying, "It's time to make room for other things." It also seems that Fox felt they had enough episodes for it to run in syndication, so they would still be making money from it and it would still air. They had 98 episodes at the time. They felt that was enough to at least keep the show airing for a while, even though it wouldn't be new episodes.
That totally
Um,
worked.
yeah. And they wanted to diversify their animation offerings, which is part of why they started working on Batman the Animated Series. So possibly because the creator wanted to move on to doing Animaniacs and it had already been in the works for a while, they felt it would be like two similar shows, Tiny Toons and Animaniacs,
I
sort
could
of.
see that.
And Tom Ruger, who I think is the creator of Tiny Toons and Animaniacs, he actually did a Reddit AMA where he completely shut down this rumor of the show being canceled due to a stalker. He also referred to previous interviews where he is supposedly quoted about the stalking and blamed the stalking for the show being canceled. These are actually completely made up. He never gave any of these interviews, never gave any of these sound bites. Again, when you try to get back to the source of these quotes, all you can find are these message board posts
Hmm.
where they're putting quotes around it. They're saying that Tom Ruger said it. He is actually quoted as saying it is made up blather unconnected to anything that actually happened.
Wow, it's a lot there.
It is a lot. Like I said, I learned a lot about certain things against my will.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yes.
Actually, probably several questions, but the first thing that comes to mind is I need to make sure I'm reading this right, hearing this right.
Mm,
The Bernie vids, the documentary, whatever you want to call it.
sure.
Is this the title? The Tiny Toon Stalker, Terror from 1994? Or is it from 1994? Like,
No,
is it the
that is the
movie?
whole title. That's the whole title
So my
of the
question
YouTube
is,
video.
okay, so of all the stuff you said to me, which was a lot, but the thing that stuck out the most is it's called Terror from 1994. This is 2 years after the show was canceled.
I understand, yes.
So even if any of this was true, it sounds like to me this was happening in 94, which would have been 2 years removed from the show being canceled anyways. So kind of going back to Tom's point here that whether it was made up or not, it clearly was made up for the reason the show got canceled. Because if there was a stalker, he waited 2 years after the fact the show got canceled to stalk Babs. because a lot of times when shows get canceled, we see this now at Comic
Mm-hmm.
Cons. People have not been on TV or movies or at that particular role for decades now, and people still stand
Right.
in line to meet that person who played X role. So I get that. I get how that works. So it just does seem like they kind of did pin this giant tail
Mm-hmm.
of ruining Tiny Toons or being creepy and weird on this Dennis guy who I guess wrote some X-rated fanfics about cartoon teenage bunnies.
Yeah.
Uh,
From what I gather, he was
it's
already
weird.
a member of like the online furry community before, Tiny Toons was a thing.
Sure.
And then got into Tiny Toons, like you do, I guess. But yeah, they think that him being blamed had something to do with angering someone in the furry community, but they've still never figured out who.
Okay.
But they do, like I said, they do talk to the real guy. He's like, I would just like to live a normal life, even though he's like also ended up being out there publicly as like writing erotic fan fiction about a children's show because of like the legal stuff that actually did pop up.
Yeah.
But like I said, weirdly enough, he's like a pioneer for like fan forums and fan fiction, online fandoms. So yeah, that's a turn I wasn't expecting in our very silly Tiny Toon movie discussion. But yeah, the title Terror from 1994, from what I understand from the video, it like referenced, I want to say an article or like a post. Like someone wrote something out about this guy that was called Terror from 1994. But again, like you said, the date doesn't work. So,
Yeah. Again,
yeah.
if all this was true, the stalking and everything, it just doesn't align with the cancellation date. This is 2 years later.
I will end all this by saying that if you ever are on Wikipedia or see like kind of a BuzzFeed type of article that's like weird reasons why your favorite shows were canceled, and you hear about this Dennis Falk guy being spoofed in Night Ghoulery and being like the stalker that got Tiny Toons canceled, it is apparently not true.
Also, do your research. If you're reading Wikipedia, it's fact check.
Yes, also make sure you fact check because Wikipedia can be great, but check your sources.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Make sure they're not random message board posts.
Yeah. What a time.
Yep. So that all being said, does this movie hold up for you?
Hold on, I gotta get myself out of this funk now.
I'm so
Uh,
sorry.
no, you're fine. It's actually very interesting and albeit bizarre and weird, but it's kind of I don't want to say fun, but kind of fun hearing something like this because it was of a time where the message boards were a thing, and there's a lot of fact checking that couldn't be done. And it's just really interesting to hear that this has existed all this time, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of crazy to me. So yeah, that was interesting. But did it hold up? I think for the most part, yeah. Especially from like a nostalgia standpoint, I mentioned having like flashbacks of hanging out with friends during summertime, last day of school. Like this cartoon kind of invoked all those memories as well as memories of me watching it. The comedy was still funny. As always, jokes are hit differently when you're an adult, mostly because you miss most of them, like the Norman Rockwell part. I still enjoyed it. I still thought it was funny. I liked the older animation style. I liked at the very beginning. It was to me it was more noticeable then when I'm taking notes because there's not a lot of dialogue and just a lot of introduction to characters, but the backgrounds were really beautifully done. I
Hmm.
like that old school hand drawn style. I mean, now we get that style, but it's kind of done on the computer, so not quite the same.
Right. I feel funny answering whether it held up, considering I didn't even think I had seen this before until I rewatched it. But I enjoyed this. It's a fun little, piece of my childhood that I had completely
Mm-hmm.
forgotten about. But
Whoops.
yeah, whoops. To your point, I think it almost holds up more watching it as an adult because there are so many jokes and references that you probably wouldn't understand as a kid. It's definitely one of those things where they were thinking about everyone that might be watching this, not just the kids. I always appreciate that. Anything else you need to say?
I got nothing. No,
All
no,
right.
no.
All
We're
right.
just all a little loony.
Yep.
Some more than others.
Well, we would love to hear your thoughts on Tiny Toon Adventures, how I spent my vacation, as well as your own favorite summer movies. You can find us on Instagram at Back Through the Lens Pod and on Facebook at Back Through the Lens. You can also email us at backthroughthelenspodcast@gmail.com. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. It's the best way to support our show.
If you enjoyed our show today, please give us a like and follow for updates on new and future episodes. Our show is produced by our host, Rachel Campbell, and myself, Joe Sielmick, with additional help and support from Peter Telep of LPV Productions. Peter, Rachel, and I are also the executive producers. Our awesome logo is brought to you by Tom Fracci, and our wonderful theme song is by Matt Tarek. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more trips into our movie-watching past on Back Through the Lens. Let me get my walker out, please.
I know. Is this show going to give me a midlife crisis?
This show is our midlife crisis.